12 principles of animation are some of the most universally accepted rules for creating fluid and engaging movement. But what are they? Established by Disney animators O. Johnston and F. Thomas in the 1981 book, The Illusion of Life, Disney Animation, the principles are based on research done by Disney animators dating all the way back to the 1930s. Although intended for 2D animation, one can see that the principles outlined in this book are entirely applicable to 3D animation. We'll look at how timing, slow in and slow out, as well as exaggeration are all utilized in a 3D medium. One of the most important principles shared by the two mediums is timing. Luckily, most 2D and 3D films share a frames per second of 24, which is especially good because when talking about timing, a few frames can make the difference between an action looking like it has weight and momentum and being painfully slow. Here we can see the difference between a walk cycle on 24 frames and the other on 32 frames. Although they're essentially the same, we can tell a lot by the mood of the character by how quickly they're walking. And even though computer animators don't draw every single frame, a strong knowledge of timing is still required to get this right. However, another medium that's applied the same way in 2D and 3D is slow ins and slow outs. Know that motion tends to happen with acceleration and deceleration, which is good because audiences also find that motion without this, without slow ins and slow outs, are very boring, which is why both 2D and 3D animators have ways of applying this. Here that the connection between the two keyframes is not a straight linear line, rather it's curved. It starts off slow as the ball begins its motion and picks up in speed as it accelerates due to gravity. Although we can see computer animators have a much easier time of implementing slow ins and slow outs through the use of tangents, we can still see that the principle still applies here. The final principle I'm going to talk about is exaggeration. Unlike most principles, exaggeration is about more than just replicating real life. For example, a person falling will squash and stretch slightly upon landing, but an animator looking to exaggerate the sense of momentum would have the character squash almost all the way to the ground before popping back up. Here we can see that although the character is jumping across a gap like any regular person would, his actions are a lot more stretched. He's almost rubbery and exaggerated in respect to the principle of squash and stretch, which helps make a rather boring action like a jump seem a bit more interesting and appealing. Which is why I think so long as hyperrealism isn't the goal, exaggeration remains an important principle to create visually interesting animation. Although Disney's 12 principles were established long before the widespread use of computer animation, we can still see how they're used in terms of timing, slow-ins, and outs, as well as exaggeration. The 12 principles of animation have remained unchanged for as long as they have because they're still clearly perfectly applicable to modern animation, both for 2D and computer mediums.